are laying the groundwork for a strong semiconductor manufacturing and research and development and design ecosystem. For the program to continue to strengthen the US economy, to safeguard US national security, and to foster global cooperation, there is more work to be done. This includes the successful implementation of the Advanced Manufacturing Investment Credit regulations, as well as adding research and design to the investment tax credit. Now, ITI is eager to continue collaborating with US policymakers to further the advancement of semiconductor technologies and boost US competitiveness. And part of that collaboration is what you're going to witness here at today's event. We're absolutely thrilled to be joined by Dr. Lori LoCascio, who is Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology and the Director of NIST. Lori's background spans research and academia, including more than 30 years in the employ of NIST itself. She joins us today to discuss how research and development will continue to play a vital role in realizing the administration's goals for the CHIPS program. After our conversation with Dr. LoCascio, we'll talk to Mike Schmidt, who is Director of the CHIPS Program Office at the Commerce Department. Mike and I will talk about future investments in chips and other opportunities to supercharge the US semiconductor industry. We're excited to take a deep dive into the future of semiconductors today here at ITI. I'd like to ask you all to join me in welcoming Dr. Lori LoCascio.
Hi, Jason. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm thrilled to be joined by both you and Mike Schmidt, my colleague at the Department of Commerce.
Well, we're thrilled to be joined by you today. Hope all is well with you up in Gaithersburg, and appreciate your taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule. NIST, of course, we're talking today about semiconductors, but NIST is so involved in so many aspects of our lives, and the work you have going on under your leadership at NIST is nothing short of crucial to the investments that are driving our technology-powered economy. So we're not here to talk about AI. We're not here to talk about standards. We're not here to talk about all the other things that are going on there. We're talking about semiconductors today. And particularly, I appreciate your taking the time to talk to us about the research and development programs that were enabled by the CHIPS and Science Act. There's a tendency, and I'm guilty of it too, to talk about the CHIPS Act and to forget about the and science part of the CHIPS Act. And research and development and design in the context of the CHIPS and Science Act is critical. The Act recognized this, of course, by allocating $11 billion for R&D activities. Now, that, of course, goes alongside the more than $60 billion that the industry, the private sector, is spending on semiconductor research and development. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on how important that investment by Congress was into R&D, and how the Commerce Department is thinking about deploying these funds and the timeline for deploying these funds across all of the multiple research and development programs under your leadership.
Sure. Well, I think it's fun that we're starting the conversation with R&D and then moving on to manufacturing, because really everything has to start with R&D, right? If you don't do the research and you don't do the development, you don't have the designs to incorporate into the manufacturing facility. And so we've got a lot that's going on right now to launch really a very robust semiconductor R&D ecosystem in the United States. We had that for so many years, and that really was what led to our dominance on the global scale in semiconductors. And so, over the years, as manufacturing moved overseas, we still do R&D here, but we've really lost what I would say our dominant position in semiconductor R&D. So we're really trying to, as we build out the manufacturing ecosystem, simultaneously rebuild a very robust semiconductor R&D ecosystem in the United States. And that's going to be powered by these $11 billion in funds that were granted to us by the CHIPS and Science Act, and that the Department of Commerce is managing. And so I'm happy to expound upon and expand, many of the things that we're doing in CHIPS R&D. There are 4 distinct programs, and I'm happy to talk about what those are and what that entails.
Yeah, let's do that. So the four programs, let me see if I can get them all right here. We've got the NSTIC, as people popularly refer it to as the National Semiconductor Technology Center. We've got the, I don't want to short form this one, NAPMUP, I guess it would be the National Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program. You must have a better way of doing this. Then you've got the CHIPS Metrology Program and the CHIPS Manufacturing USA Institute. So maybe we can take those one at a time. Let's start with the one that gets the most headlines. And you've done an amazing job of attracting leadership and bringing people into government to staff up the NSTIC. So the National Semiconductor Technology Center. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, so these four programs are you know, they're called out basically in the law. And so Congress did create four distinct programs. They each have a specific function, but it's important to point out before I talk about each one of the individual programs that they have a shared vision of success, wherein by 2030, the United States is the only country in the world that invents and designs and manufactures and packages leading edge chips. And so that's a very important goal. All of the CHIPS R&D programs really come under that umbrella and complement each other to really drive forward technological breakthroughs, that the ones that really created the semiconductor industry in the first place, to drive those next technological breakthroughs and really create, as I mentioned at the beginning, that robust research ecosystem that makes companies that we're establishing here in the United States want to stay here in the United States because they need to, because that's where all the R&D is done, right? They need to be close by. So the first one, as you mentioned, is I'll just call it the NSTC. That really provides the infrastructure and the research funding to invest and commercialize the future of chips. And it has NatCast as the operator. I can talk more about that, but essentially it's a public-private partnership that is very centrally focused on investing and commercializing the future of chips. The second one is NAPMP, and that's about advanced packaging. And so the work that we're doing there is to invest to expand that limited packaging capabilities that we have now in the United States. That's important because we need to get all the benefits of speed and efficiency that we can gain through packaging design. We don't have those capabilities here yet. And so we really need to drive forward that through the NAPMP, the National Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program. The CHIPS Manufacturing USA program, that's really driving our ability to improve our capability to build chips more efficiently, right? Reducing the time to design and implement the manufacturing processes and also to integrate new materials into that manufacturing process. And then finally, there's the CHIPS Metrology Program, something near and dear to my heart, because that really builds on this long-standing and successful industry supported activities and role in measurement science. And this becomes more and more important, the ability to measure, atomic scale features packaged in three-dimensional devices. That's really hard metrology. And so the CHIPS Metrology Program is really built to support the industry there. So since CHIPS and Science Act was passed, and we're really happy to be celebrating our 2-year anniversary, lots to talk about, but the CHIPS R&D program has proposed over $8 billion in R&D initiatives, and that includes more than $5 billion in the NSTC and more than $3 billion in the NAPMP, the packaging program. Also more than $285 billion in a CHIPS Manufacturing USA Institute around digital twins, and $54 million for small business innovation research. We'll be announcing those grants soon, and $130 million in CHIPS metrology projects. Lots going on. We also announced, going back to the NSTC, we announced 3 facilities for advanced semiconductor R&D. The NSTC prototyping and the NAPMP advanced packaging piloting facility, they're going to be co-located, the Administrative and Design Center and the EUV Center. So there are these distinct programs, but But if I can spend a minute, I just want to talk about the connectivity between them, because they're built separately, but they're designed to be working together and in tandem, because really every dollar that we plan for, we have designed connections between all of these 4 programs. We genuinely do not believe that creating 4 distinct programs that are all separate and don't work together will accomplish the bold vision that we have and will achieve the goals for the country. And so as we've designed these 4 programs, we've really built in very, very important program links. I can give you some examples if you don't mind
That would be
about
great.
how they're linked together. Notably and very importantly, very recently, we announced our facilities plan, our facilities model. And when we announced it, we announced our intent to co-locate the NSTC R&D prototyping facility and the advanced packaging piloting facility. These are huge investments. These are the largest investments in NSTC and NAPMP, and we are building in a hard link between these 2 programs by physically connecting our major investments in each of these programs. There's a reason for that, because we really want to enable world-class research across the full technology stack for semiconductors, right? From materials to design, to manufacturing, to packaging. And the reason why this is really important is because the lines today between chip design and packaging are really blurred. Especially, at the beginning, you talked about our last conversation was actually around AI, especially in critical application areas like chips for AI. The lines between the chip and package are becoming seamless, right? So, so that's our first investment that really created this hard link, and you're going to see more of that coming out this fall. Then there's the metrology program. As I said, that's near and dear to me since NIST is all about metrology. Metrology threads through all of these programs, and we are making sure that every investment that we make in metrology can feed directly into, well, first of all, is informed by industry, as NIST work always is, but it directly feeds into the NSTC and NAPMP facilities that we have planned. So as we're developing new tools, for instance, for measuring atomic scale devices with 3-dimensional features, we plan to have these tools and have that data available for the NSTC and the NAPMP facilities. So again, this is really built and designed to be all intertwined and connected to take advantage of the capabilities that we're building. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is the Manufacturing USA program. We've designed the Digital Twin Manufacturing USA Institute with a direct linkage to the NSTC and NAPMP programs. We envision it to be sort of collaborative space to validate and verify some of the models. And also I wanted to mention that one of the grand challenges in the metrology area includes model validation, which is another connection point to Manufacturing USA. So, I guess what I'm saying is that we've taken the past, you asked a short question, I'm answering it very long, but what I'm saying is that we've taken the past year to really design these programs and design the connections between the programs so that in sum, they really cover all of the major R&D gaps that industry faces. We've listened, we've heard industry, and we're designing these very deliberately. And the programs together build out complementary resources and directly work with each other. So the planning is done. I can talk a lot more about implementation that's underway for each one of the programs. But right now, we are at the point where we're picking the right projects and the right partners to act out our plans. And that's critical now. We have to have our partners and projects that are open and collaborative, that have transformational ideas and the right mindset for public-private partnership, because that's what it's all about with CHIPS R&D.
And I can see your excitement in rolling all those
am.
programs out, particularly I can particularly see that this is where the PhD research scientist in you comes out with excitement about the metrology program in particular. They're all
Yeah.
exciting, but I can tell that the actual core of the research that's happening as a result of this is your passion, and it's great to see that excitement about all these programs rolling out. And on that subject, given that NIST under your leadership is really playing this core role across all of government, because there are obviously other government agencies that have a hand in research development and investment. And I wanted to ask you if there's a plan to develop a national R&D strategy along with all of these programs, because they cut across a number of agencies, and different agencies are pulling in different directions, and it's always hard to find common threads among agencies. NIST plays this role in a number of areas, obviously the standards area, but also in AI. You're playing this role as a coordinating entity among governments, agencies that are doing this work. So can you talk to us at all about a plan to develop a national R&D strategy that kind of cuts across government, supports these R&D priorities that are both private sector and government priorities, and strengthens U.S. technological competitiveness at the same time? Can we look for something like that coming up?
It's a great question. So, the NSTC and NatCast, as partner in NatCast, will be developing a strategy for R&D. But you're talking really about what's the all of government approach, right? And I think that's really critical throughout the planning and that execution that I just talked about. It sounded like we were sitting in a box, maybe thinking about how we were going to plan and connect these programs. That really wasn't done in a vacuum. It never is, as you know. NIST has deliberately reached out to all government partners and government agencies to think about, their programs, what they're doing in microelectronics, how we can complement what they're doing, how once these facilities are born and the research programs are created and launched, how they can be interconnected, especially, for instance, workforce programs that NSF is driving and the workforce programs that NatCast is driving through NSTC is driving through NatCast. But in many other areas, of course, Department of Defense has new programs that they've launched, both in workforce and clearly in facilities. And we are coordinating everything very closely. We haven't come together to put together a new national strategy, perhaps like the microelectronics strategy that was developed through the OSTP, but we talk very frequently and coordinate our activities and try to make sure that as we're addressing gaps, the work that we do is not the same, right? It complements each other, and we're doing different things that can cover the enormous gaps that exist in the industry that we're creating. I'll also say that, as I pointed out in my initial, discussion, NIST reaches out to industry very easily and very often, and so we engage with our stakeholders in every part of this program planning. We reached out to industry. They helped us develop the 7 grand challenges in metrology. They helped us develop the first research plans that we were going to launch through NSTC. So there were, and they definitely had input into the Digital Twin Institute that we launched through Manufacturing USA. So a lot of stakeholder engagement, a lot of cross coordination across government, but no direct plan to build a new national strategy at this point in time.
And speaking of the NSTC, the National Semiconductor Technology Center, and private sector engagement, I wanted to ask you about that. And then last topic we'll have a chance to talk about is workforce development, which obviously is a key component here. So the NSTC recently announced its own roadmap and priorities around facilities and workforce and funding opportunities. Just wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about next steps for the NSTC, what your vision is there, and the important question, and you have been talking about this, what's the best way for the private sector to engage and participate with the NSTC?
Oh, yeah, there will be lots of opportunities for private sector to engage in the NSTC. I mean, we're very intentionally laying the groundwork for the NSTC and helping to establish its partner NatCast. And that's been happening for over a year. And now we're very aggressively rolling out programs. So lots of opportunities to participate. The NSTC is clearly a membership organization. And so that's key, right? Its members are the NSTC. And so the great power of the NSTC is to convene participants across industry, customers, universities, suppliers, entrepreneurs, investors, really to bring everybody together through the NSTC, so that we can so that they can have unparalleled access to partners and an investment fund and a wealth of additional resources that pushes forward the research in this area. Maybe I should mention what NatCast is. There might be a few people out there who don't know, but we have built something through the NSTC. We established a purpose-built nonprofit that operates the NSTC on behalf of the government. And this structure is very unique for government, but stakeholders basically and the industry advisory committee that we built told us that we need to build something from the ground up that could be sustained for decades to come to benefit U.S. innovation. So we did this. We established this purpose-built nonprofit called NatCast and have tremendous leadership in Deirdre Hanford. And that is really what we envision 40 years from now will still be going on, 50 years from now, doing new things to promote U.S. innovation in semiconductor research. But you mentioned there are facilities and workforce and research funding opportunities underway right now. Facilities, I alluded to those. We are. That's really going to be the gateway for members to join and have access to facilities that will support and extend U.S. leadership in semiconductor research and semiconductor design and semiconductor engineering, and advanced manufacturing and workforce development. And so this summer with NatCast, we kicked off a process to select these 3 facilities. They are going to be these centers of energy, these places where people convene, where the members come to do joint research and to do their best research. And we think this is going to be the best way to serve the entire country through these 3 facilities. And that includes, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a combined facility for packaging and prototyping. It's a facility for design and a facility for EUV. Or photolithography. And when these 3 facilities are operational, they're going to be these world-class destinations. And that's a place that we want to see members join. We want to see members come to. NIST will be there, right? We're going to definitely have our metrologists there participating. We're very well underway into establishing these places. This place-based centers of excellence for the United States in semiconductor research. And you're going to see a lot of exciting news coming out in the coming months regarding these facilities. We've also launched initial funding opportunities through NatCast. They announced a $30 million, we jointly announced a $30 million funding opportunity to advance AI-based tools for RF and integrated circuits design. This is a place where AI definitely meets design for semiconductor research. And we think this can shorten the time from identification of a problem to a fully working solution. We're excited about that. But there's also last week we announced another funding opportunity, a Jumpstart project called Test Vehicle Innovation Pipeline. Again, we look for people to jump onto these funding opportunities and provide their best ideas. There's a lot more coming from NatCast in terms of funding opportunities. But as I said, with build out of these facilities, we don't just want to throw money over the fence. We want to provide a place where people can come to do research together. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this, is workforce. So recently we announced through NSTC a Workforce Partner Alliance program, again partnering with the NatCast to make up to 10 awards between 500,000 and $2 million. And that's really to create or expand workforce initiatives that can address some of the critical gaps we're seeing and critical skills gaps that we're seeing in semiconductor design, manufacturing, and production.
And we know that that has been a huge issue for the semiconductor
Yeah.
industry. Finding that skilled workforce and workforce development is obviously a key component alongside the R&D, alongside the manufacturing, to making this goal of reestablishing US semiconductor dominance by 2030. I know this is something you've been very focused on. Commerce Department and National Science Foundation just entered into an MOU on semiconductor workforce development, jointly investing $30 million over the next 5 years. The Department of Commerce also issued this department administrative order earlier this year around workforce policy, and NIST is a part of the Commerce Workforce Council there on workforce policy and programs. So this workforce issue for the private sector obviously is existential. If you can't find the people to do the work, you can't do the work. And it's great to see Commerce making these investments, and NIST in particular focusing on workforce. Can you tell me a little bit more about the workforce work and how we're going to see that roll out in the coming months, and what you're thinking about the role of NIST and Commerce more broadly in these workforce development issues?
Yeah, I've been traveling around the country hearing and meeting and talking, not just to the manufacturers, but also to the students that we'd like to bring into manufacturing and into these facilities that we're building around the country, and to build up the workforce, the workforce that can do the R&D as well. And the important part about these jobs that we're creating, both in R&D and manufacturing, is they're good jobs, right? They can be good paying jobs. And there are a broad range of jobs that could be available, that will be available in through semiconductor manufacturing facilities and in R&D. So, we have multiple things that are coming out soon. We did just announce this partnership with NSF. I think that's really a good first step for us to work together to try to make sure that we can create programs and use funding from NSF and DOC to create programs to first of all attract interest in these new jobs, right? These new good paying jobs, to really adopt curricula and best practices that are effective and can be scaled. To provide that kind of assistance to educators, technical assistance to educators and trainers for the semiconductor industry. So we are, and then NSTC, NatCast will also be announcing a Workforce Center of Excellence soon. So we have a number of investments, as I mentioned, to support workforce development, workforce curricula, to try to draw in new people who never thought of the semiconductor industry before, to attract them into this exciting industry, and a place where they can have a really great job to support their families and to support the local and regional economies that we're building around the United States with these investments.
Well, it's incredibly important work, and I appreciate the focus on workforce. And obviously, the private sector benefits from that, and the partnership with DOC on workforce development issues. Last thing I wanted to ask you about before we let you go and turn over to Mike Schmidt is about what we can look forward to for the rest of the year. You've talked a lot about programs that are underway and funding opportunities that are out there. Wanted to ask you specifically about the CHIPS R&D office plans for the rest of the year. Any significant projects we can expect to be announced by the end of the year? What are we looking forward to, and what are you most excited about?
Oh, it's going to be a very aggressive fall, an exciting fall. We're going to be you'll see a lot of announcements around the facilities, as I mentioned. Yeah, you're going to see a big launch of the second notice funding opportunity out of the National Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program. That's a $1.6 billion funding opportunity. It's very exciting, and that's really meant to accelerate domestic capacity for semiconductor advanced packaging. And then very soon you'll see the announcement of the CHIPS Metrology program's Small Business Innovation Research Awards. And, I'm really excited about that as well, because, it's important that we are, first of all, creating a lot of energy in the United States around forming big teams with that are public-private partnerships with industry and academia and investors, and everybody is really coming together to try to answer the calls in these in these funding opportunities. But I'll also say that we cannot forget about those amazing entrepreneurs in the United States, and that's why I'm excited about these SBIRs, because we selected some incredible entrepreneurs who are, hopefully they'll be the next great America business, right?
Fantastic. Well, that's exciting to look forward to. Lori LoCascio, Director of NIST, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, I always enjoy talking to you, Jason. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your leadership on all these important programs. And we will move to Mike Schmidt. And let me, first of all, Mike, welcome you, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here at ITI today.
Good morning, Jason, and very happy to be here, and always happy to follow Lori, who's just been awesome in her leadership and partnership.
We are very lucky to have her in the role that she is in, and she's been a great partner for the tech industry on all the semiconductor matters under her purview, but also everything else that happens at NIST, all the exciting things. But we're here to talk about the manufacturing side of the CHIPS and Science Act. And happy anniversary to you! 2 years for the CHIPS Program Office, which you set up, means 2 years for you at the Department of Commerce. So I guess probably 2 years and 1 month, maybe.
Well, I started because I wasn't here. I wasn't at Commerce when CHIPS passed. I was at Treasury,
right?
And they kind of called me over, and so my first day was actually right after Labor Day of 2022. Yeah. So I'm kind of at my personal 2-year anniversary right now. So
happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to the program. Look, before we talk about all the progress that's been made and get to all of the things that are going to happen in the next few months, I just wanted to ask you to remind everybody about what you set up. I think there's a tendency to forget about the infrastructure that you built in the CHIPS Program Office, and all the talent that you brought in, all the capabilities that are there. And then, of course, there's an election coming up, and that's going to happen, but the work that you're doing and your colleagues are doing is not going to stop. So I just wanted to ask you to just briefly remind us of what you've built over the last 2 years and what the CHIPS Program Office looks like today.
Well, thank you for that question. People don't really think about it, but a major 39 billion, the manufacturing piece of chips is 39 billion, major 39 billion program passes. There is no existing team to manage that, right? There's no, depending on the program, there's no existing infrastructure. And certainly in this case, we were, kind of from scratch, building and then exercising a muscle that the federal government hasn't really exercised in a while. And so I was the first employee back in September of 2022, and working with Secretary Raimondo, who's, I doubt your members need to have any doubt about this, but whose leadership on this has just been truly extraordinary. We aligned on 3 core kind of early focuses. One was establishing a vision for the program. And so it was really important to us that we, actually lay out what we wanted to achieve in some specificity, so that we were ultimately going to be accountable to our stakeholders, to the public. And so we were really sending signals to industry about the kind of ecosystem that we're trying to create. So we did that through our vision for success. So one is vision. The second is program, which is really laying out exactly how it's going to work. What does the application look like? What are the criteria by which applications would be evaluated? How does the process work? That really nitty-gritty of implementation. So we laid that out with our with our first NOFO. And we now have two NOFOs. And the third, as you said, and the most important is team. This is really hard what we're trying to do, and it's not possible without an extraordinary team. So, we went from me being the first employee back in September of 2022. Within 9 months, we had about 150 people. Now we're at about 180 people. And we have an extraordinary group. We have an investments team that is really focused on the financial and commercial aspects of the deal. That's led by Todd Fisher, our chief investment officer, who comes from a couple decades of experience in private equity, and that's a team filled with people with investment backgrounds, financial backgrounds, industry backgrounds, consulting backgrounds, to really kind of be the tip of the spear on the commercial aspects of our engagements with applicants. We have a strategy team that has industry expertise, economists, national security experts, workforce experts, environmental permitting experts, that kind of works in a matrixed way with the investment team to provide the holistic kind of evaluation and then support for our ultimate investments. And then we complement that with a risk team, operations team, external affairs, legal. So it's really, you have to build from scratch. It's a startup. You have to build all the core components, and among the many things I'm proud of, I'm very, very proud of the team here. So.
Yeah, 180 people, and it's funny, you've essentially sketched out a private equity firm. You got a $39 billion private equity fund that you're running, and it's actually taxpayer funded, but you know what I mean. And you've designed it that way, and you've set it up that way. And I wonder.
That's right. We actually have, we make our investments in an investment committee. That's what we call it.
No, exactly. I mean, that is what it looks like. It's you cut your teeth on the Yale endowment, so you're used to running $39 billion funds. Although Yale's is probably a little bit bigger than that.
It was not when I was there. Well, yeah, so.
I'm sure it's only gone down since you left. Before we get into the program and what's going on today, I just want to ask you to reflect on the last couple of years. It would be absurd if we let the 2-year anniversary go by without you talking a little bit about how the vision and the work has evolved or changed since you set things up 2 years ago. Maybe you can tell us what the biggest surprise has been, or the biggest difference has been in how things have played out versus what you were thinking was going to happen 2 years ago, if you can remember that far back.
Well, I think one thing that is clear, and this will be clear into the future, is just how dynamic and competitive and ever-changing this industry is going to be, right? And so we have had to be responsive to, that kind of dynamic aspect. We'll continue to be responsive in terms of what we're building into the future, post-award operation, et cetera, while staying focused on really our North Star objectives of building sustainable leading-edge clusters, advancing, advanced packaging, which I think has been an extraordinary kind of and less told success of the program. Making really important investments in current mature, making important investments in memory, and so we respond to things like the rise of AI as a major driver of leading-edge chip demand, but we kind of do it in a way that is really always focused on our North Star objectives and principles. And when I look back at the last 2 years, I think where we are is extraordinary. If you think about the diversity of firms we're attracting, so there are 5 firms in the world that can manufacture leading edge chips at scale. We now have all 5 of those firms making major investments in the United States: Intel, TSMC, Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix. No other economy in the world has more than 2 of those operating. So we are now a premier location for investment in leading edge manufacturing capacity. And you think about where we started, which is 0% of the world's leading edge chips being made here. That is an extraordinary evolution in the industry and kind of the activity that's happening here. The scale of these investments are also extraordinary. So, these companies are making, the leading edge companies making over $300 billion of investment commitments. And, each of those investments is kind of extraordinary individually in terms of its own scale. And, these are investments that are not only going to take us from, independent industry estimates say kind of 0 to, we said our goal is 20% of leading edge logic chip manufacturing. SIA has an estimate that says we'll get up to 28. We'll kind of see how all that plays out. But, not only going to take us to, advance that critical economic national security objective, but also just be hugely transformational for the communities where this investment is happening. So, the diversity of the firms, the scale, and then the technology. We have all 3 leading edge logic players working on their, equivalent of a kind of 2 nanometer technology. So really the most advanced technologies in the world. We have Micron making, at the very bleeding edge of leading edge memory, which is, hugely important input to the future of compute and AI. Really cannot be overstated. And then, I mentioned advanced packaging. You have, this is something where there wasn't, a ton of activity or kind of discussion before the CHIPS Act passed, although Intel had a really important announcement and project in New Mexico. But we articulated in our vision for success the importance of advanced packaging to the ecosystem we're trying to create. And we now have, Intel, SK Hynix, Amkor, which is an OSAT, independent packaging company, and Samsung, as part of its, kind of major vision in Taylor, Texas. All those companies doing advanced packaging, and advanced packaging is fundamental to not only the supply chain security we're trying to create, but also the kind of technology roadmap that will kind of keep enhancing performance, with less energy needed kind of going forward, and really the integration of logic and memory and how all that's going to work. So that's a hugely important thing. And then R&D, the United States has really important R&D ecosystems right now, in Oregon and in Idaho. So we're going to be making investments in these R&D ecosystems, and we're creating new ones, right? So Samsung is committed to doing an R&D fab down in Taylor, Texas, which is, just truly extraordinary, to create in Taylor, Texas, kind of half hour outside of Austin, a brand new site for, the development of the world's most advanced technologies.
It's amazing the investment and the manufacturing is taking place. I visited that Samsung facility alongside the existing semiconductor plant they have down there.
One thing I will say, and sorry, I don't want to cut off your next question, but I think it is important for folks who haven't had the privilege that I've had of like visiting these sites and seeing the extraordinary scale of what is emerging out of the ground. These are not just announcements. These are dollars being plowed into the ground to build manufacturing facilities. There's been more investments in electronics manufacturing in the United States since the CHIPS Act passed than in the previous 26 years combined. So truly transformative. Sorry,
it absolutely is. And the work of the program has been incredible. And we'll talk in just a second about where we're headed. But I think it's really important to reemphasize your comment about the breadth of global investment that's taking place here in the U.S. These are international companies that are coming to the U.S. And it does show the wisdom of Congress's decision to make those funds available internationally, something that ITI advocated very strongly for. So at the same time that we have Intel, which is the storied American semiconductor company and the birthplace of the semiconductor, making huge investments around the U.S. You also have these international companies like TSMC, like SK Hynix, coming in and making the investments here, and that's enormously important. So let's talk about the work that's to come. And of course, part of that is the significant progress that's been made, over $30 billion out of the 39 in what you like to call preliminary memorandum of terms. Something that I think has entered the common vernacular of the semiconductor industry for the first time, PMTs as we call them. So the key word there is the preliminary part. And you've entered into these with, I think, 17 companies at this point. So obviously all these companies and indeed the broader ecosystem of the technology industry that cares a lot about semiconductor manufacturing is eager to hear about next steps in ensuring that the funds themselves are distributed to those companies that have signed PMTs already. What can you tell us about that?
So yeah, we laid out a process in our NOFO. We signed PMT, which is a preliminary term sheet, but it's a very substantive commercial document. And it kind of outlines the core kind of commercial and strategic arrangement between us and our applicants. Then that translates into a due diligence process and execution of final award documentation. And we are, working very hard and very constructively with our applicants to really get to final award. And I think we'll see that final awards being executed and money to start flowing certainly over the course of this year. And at the same time, we will continue to work through our pipeline, and we have continue to have extraordinary interest. Our NOFOs are now all closed, but we're kind of going to work through that pipeline of applications to allocate the rest of our funds. So you have the kind of driving to final award, money at the door, allocation of the rest of the funds, and then that all kind of combines into an organization that has to enter a next phase, right? And so, we have built a startup in government over the last 2 years, and now we are building a startup within a startup, which is our post-award portfolio management operation. We've named Linnell McKay as our Chief Portfolio Management Officer. Linnell has a couple of decades of experience, Freescale, Motorola, deep industry expertise. And so we're building out that team that's going to be managing these awards into the future, because our awards are milestone based, right? Money going out the door as milestones are being met, as taxpayers' objectives are being met. And we're doing that in a way that is has to be conscious of the fact that as dynamic as the last 2 years have been in this industry, the next 2 and the next 5 are going to be equally, if not more dynamic, right? And so we need to build an operation that is savvy, nimble, hard-headed about taxpayer interests, but really laser focused on, advancing our ultimate objectives.
Yeah, I appreciate, Mike, you're noting that these PMTs are significantly fleshed out agreements, and I think the best evidence of that is, I went out to Intel's announcement in Ohio. President's there making the announcement. The president's not going to be there making an announcement about something that's just kind of, etherware or vaporware. And then in Arizona, same thing. Went out there, saw the president there again announcing his excitement about Intel making these investments. Clearly, the president's not going to be there talking about these programs and these announcements and these PMTs unless they're very serious steps toward finalizing them. So I appreciate your reminding everybody that these are real, fleshed out, substantive things. And I certainly understand that you are not here to make any, game show size check presentations here on our announcement. Although you're welcome to do that if you want to, but it's good to hear that things are moving forward.
We got the printing presses going. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate that, and it's good to hear that things are moving forward. And I do think it's important to remember that you got 180 people working on this, and they're going to be working hard for the rest of the year to make sure this goes out the door. So $30 billion announced so far. With 17 companies, it's a $39 billion program. And again, without asking you to commit to any particular day of the week where it's going to happen, I assume we'll see some more PMTs coming out in the coming weeks and months as well.
Yes, absolutely. The investment operation continues to hum. And so, yeah, as I said, in the coming months, you'll both see awards being finalized and new PMTs being announced, and really that will allow us to kind of, paint a picture of what that overall portfolio is going to look like against our vision for success. We're just making extraordinary progress.
Very good. I want to ask you briefly, because we're running short on time, about a NOFO that was recently announced, a notice of funding opportunity. I should stop using these acronyms.
I know, I should have too. Thank you for
That's all right. It's all right. We have a savvy audience. So focused on small scale supply chain projects was the last notice of funding opportunity that came out. Can you give us just a brief overview of the scope of that and the funding status there?
Yes, absolutely. So the first funding opportunity is available for fabrication facilities, so both front end fabrication facilities and back end packaging facilities, and also larger supply chain projects. So, zooming out, like we have an objective not only to support the fabs, but to support the packaging, which is downstream of the fabs, but also looking upstream at the supply chain. And if you look at some of our announcements already, for example, a company like Global Wafers in Texas, Global Wafers is making 300 millimeter silicon wafers, which are, the fundamental input to the chips that end up, getting manufactured on those wafers. And so, that is an important part of our objective. For smaller supply chain projects, so below $300 million in total CapEx, we created a dedicated notice of funding opportunity for those projects. And that's because a big part of our objective here is to create ecosystems around the major clusters that we're trying to fund and support. And so we got in I think 160 concept plans. We ended up inviting 53 into a full application phase. We're in the process of evaluating those applications. I think are, and we're seeing what you would expect. So major ecosystems like in Texas, like in Arizona, those are where we're seeing a lot of supply chain applications coming from. And I think it'll be, obviously smaller scale definitionally as compared to the kind of extraordinarily kind of world historic investments we're seeing on the fab side. But, I think a really important part of our overall strategy to build the clusters and the overall supply chain resilience we're going for here.
That's great to hear. And, look, as you noted earlier, the private sector is certainly doing its part in fulfilling the vision of the CHIPS and Science Act and announced $300 billion worth of investment. So it's great to see you moving forward on all of these, regardless of the scale, and getting the program to where it needs to be. Last question I want to ask you, Mike, before we have to run, is about the rest of the year and what the CPO has in store. If there are any other additional notice of funding opportunities you think will come out between now and the end of the year, or any other projects you think will be announced, anything that you can get us excited about as we start the sprint toward December?
Yes. So no additional funding opportunities. Just to be clear about that, we are oversubscribed for what we have kind of already have out there, and so we're kind of working through that. I think that the key things you can expect to see over the course of this year are additional announcements of PMTs to continue to fill out the overall portfolio, announcements of final awards, and the dollars flowing to support support our program objectives.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that overview. Mike Schmidt, Director of the CHIPS Program Office at the Department of Commerce. Mike, thanks again for all your work and all the work of your team. I know it's going to be a heck of a sprint over the next few months to get that $39 billion out the door. We appreciate all your work and appreciate your being with us here today.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Mike. And we've come to the end of our time for today on our program, but certainly not the end of our important conversation on the future of the CHIPS and Science Act and the CHIPS program. ITI will continue to convene and lead key discussions like the one we had today alongside lawmakers, industry experts, administration officials. As a leading global advocate and trade association for the tech industry, ITI has been and will continue to be a huge supporter of the CHIPS Act. We've been there since the inception and look forward to seeing more of the CHIPS Act's goals come to fruition in the coming years. As we look ahead, it's important to remain mission focused, of course, and level set against the original purpose of the CHIPS and Science Act, which is to ensure that companies can produce, design, and rely on semiconductors to innovate, to manufacture, to provide products and services to American consumers, businesses, and of course, the US government as well. On this 2-year anniversary, we continue to urge policymakers to reaffirm their commitment to securing US semiconductor leadership on a global scale. Together, the industry and the government can make clear to countries around the world that the US will use its technological prowess to compete effectively for generations to come. I want to again thank Lori Locascio and Mike Schmidt for joining us today, and thank all of you for sharing your valuable time with us. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. For everyone online, please be sure to follow ITI on X at ITI_TechTweets. Find us on LinkedIn to stay connected. And please visit our website at itic.org to learn more about our semiconductor advocacy. On behalf of the whole ITI team, I'm Jason Oxman. Thanks for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.